6:34. Sorry for being a few minutes behind schedule, but I'm sure we can make up the time. As always, we begin our meetings with the Pledge of Allegiance, and I try when I can to find a young person. I see a young man sitting back there. I don't know if he'd be willing to.
Ricardo said no.
Nice try, Ricardo. This young man got a blue shirt on. Yeah, you're turning around looking for somebody else. I'm talking to you. Yeah, you kind of, yeah, you. Would you mind leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance, sir? Let's give this young man a round of applause. If you could just tell us your name and where you go to school, and then we're all going to take our direction from you.
My name is Cornelius, and I go to school at 39.
All right. You begin whenever you want, and we'll follow you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, sir. Excellent job. Excellent job. All right, first order of business is, we've had meetings prior to this one, and it's part of the board's practice as in any parliamentary body to review those minutes and to approve them. Our last business meetings were July the 11th. Can I get a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
It's been moved by Commissioner Hallmark, seconded by?
I'll second.
Commissioner LeBron, thank you. And again, with that, for those folks who are just sort of tuning in for the first time, there are prior meetings. Someone takes notes about those prior meetings, and our rules require that those minutes, those notes, be approved. So that's what that was all about. And anytime we do an act here, it usually has to begin with, this is for the younger folks or the less experienced folks, I'm giving all this background. It has to be approved by a motion. Someone has to say, I think we should move those minutes, those notes, into the record, and then someone has to second it, and then we all have to vote. That's just the rules of how we operate here. Now, the next item on the agenda is we have speakers. We have people who speak to issues that are on our agenda. You guys could, if you went onto our website, you could take a look at our agenda. I don't think we have them here for you, but I'm following an agenda. The board tells me what topics we should consider, and I go down these topics one by one until we conclude the meeting. And the next item on our agenda is where people come and speak to the board and to the community. As many of you know, there are cameras here, so this airs on City TV, so people get to see what we say and what we do. And in that regard, I wanted to share with you all a few notes about how these meetings proceed and why they proceed in the manner that they do. The goal of this portion of the meeting is to be transparent, openly deliberative, and to listen to those that we serve and represent. So in that regard, first note, you won't see us responding to what people have to say. Sometimes people might be complimentary, and sometimes they might be critical. But no matter what they say, it's okay, because that's what a democracy is about. But what I want you all to know, particularly those young folks who haven't seen this before, we sometimes won't respond. We never respond to what people say, because again, the goal of this portion of the meeting is to be openly deliberative, transparent, and to listen to those that we represent no matter what they have to say. In order to accomplish these goals, we must have order. And people at the dais and people out in the audience have to act in a way that is consistent and complies with our rules. Now, this may sound kind of strict, but we're a democracy, and a democracy requires that people listen to each other. Sometimes that's not easy. And the only way to make it easier is if we have these rules. Everyone at this dais and out there has to comply with these rules. Now, I'm gonna share with you some of these rules. Now, where these rules come from, we have a thing called a policy handbook, and we also have regulations. And if you were to have access to it right now on your smartphone or in your hand, you would look to policy number 2390. 2390. Now, there's also a regulation that helps us figure out how does that policy take place. Now, there's a method to my madness. I'm trying to set this up so that you all understand what the rules are. I didn't make up these rules. Somebody else did before me. And those rules tell us how we all should act in this meeting. And there are rules regarding the conduct of people who want to speak. So I'm going to read you verbatim what these rules say. It says the time limit, and the clerk has told you all that the time limit is 3 minutes. The time limit per speaker will be stressed by the chair in the opening remarks, and I've already stressed that. You have 3 minutes. If a speaker ignores the time limit, the procedure shall be as follows. Now remember, I didn't write these, so you can't be hating on me. I'm just going to make sure we comply with the rules. The chairperson will interrupt and ask the speaker to quote unquote sum up. Now I've said that over the last 4 or 5 years in different ways, but basically I'll say, hey, listen, your time is up. If the signal is still ignored, the chairperson will interrupt again and ask the speaker to quote submit a written statement. And I generally don't do that, but I will tell people, you can leave a written statement. But you'll see me say that today. The chairperson must continue to interrupt the speaker until the speaker stops. Now I'm going to read you rule number 5. It says the chairperson will explain the steps that will be taken if the speaker starts to use abusive language or doesn't comply with the rules. The chairperson will interrupt and warn the speaker to, quote, address the board respectfully. And by the way, we're going to do the same thing to you. This is a two-way street. We have to respect you, but you have to respect the board and this institution. Second one says, if language continues to be abusive, a signal shall be given to turn the microphone off. Our tech staff, you with me now? If somebody, and I don't imagine it's gonna happen today, because we got young people in here and young people watching, no one would do this. If someone continues to be abusive or not comply with the rules, I will ask our tech staff to cut off the microphone. If it still continues, security personnel, and we have them here, shall escort the speaker to his or her seat. If the chairperson believes the meeting is getting out of order, the hearing shall be closed. The proceeding shall be closed. Now, I want to add something, just so that you all have notice with respect to what's going to happen, because I don't want anybody to say, I didn't know what was going to happen. We're not going to get this far in these rules, but I just want you to know what will happen. If a speaker refuses to take his or her seat, I will ask for a motion to go into executive session. We have other business to take care of. So if someone is not being cooperative and not acting in a way that they would have their children act, we will go into executive session and discuss the balance of our meeting. At which time we will continue to do the district's business, and the security personnel will approach that person or persons and kindly and respectfully ask them to stop in their conduct. Now, by the way, we're going to be doing our business in another part of this building, taking care of the people's business. And our security personnel understands that while we're doing that, they're going to be speaking to you about making sure you can comply with these rules that I've described. If you don't, our security personnel, they've been doing this for years, and when I say doing this, it means communicating with people in a respectful, decent way. They will make, in their own discretion, a judgment with respect to whether that person will be allowed to stay or whether they will be asked to leave. And by the way, citizens, taxpayers, don't worry, we're going to be taking care of the citizens' business while this happens. And again, I don't even think this is going to happen. But if it should, they're going to make a decision about what should happen while we're doing the citizens' business. And then, if they decide that that person or persons are not going to be compliant and allow the citizens to hear the work of this community, then what will happen is that person or persons may be told that they cannot come back into this building in the future. There will be no public brouhaha. As you can see, there are no media cameras here. It is going to be straightforward, and hopefully in a very gracious and respectful way, we can care about the people's business. I apologize for taking all this time today, but this is important because by doing it this way and giving everybody notice, it's a sign of respect. It also allows us to be very efficient. People won't be confused about what's happening, and we won't waste any time. All right? You won't see me giving this speech every time, because I believe people understand what we're trying to accomplish here, and I believe that in the goodness of Rochesterians to accomplish the work of children. We can't do that if us adults are tied up in our own behavior. All right? So thank you very much for your indulgence. It is my sincerest hope that we can serve as a shining example of democracy in action. But make no mistake about it. If we can't serve as a shining example of democracy in action, we will take action to make sure that democracy does take place in this room. So God bless you, and let's do this thing. The first speaker is Cynthia Clay. Is Cynthia Clay here? Thank you. Cynthia Clay. Good evening.
I'm speaking tonight on racial bias. I'm still upset that Dan Lowengar didn't handle my business. Shirley Green didn't handle my business. Now it's in your hands, Mr. Dade. My son was shoved by a teacher, and that teacher profiled him, repeatedly putting him out of her classroom. He didn't get his education in music. She basically almost killed his thrill and want to create music. I bought him a $2,000 guitar, electric guitar. He used to play it every day. He no longer plays. Okay, it's sitting in a corner gathering dust. And what did happen to the teacher? The teacher got a paid vacation, and my child is now sitting wounded. And what happened with the teacher? The teacher is going to go back into the city school district next year. Not in 39 school. Diane Hamilton won't go in 39 school. But she's going to go to some other child's classroom, and injure them. Because every year, repeatedly, she doesn't like, if you're darker than a brown paper bag, she don't like you. She puts you out of her class. She's been known to call children's mothers the B word. I'm not going to say it, but that's what she called them. How dare you continue to employ such a person? How dare you hire such people? She's not even fit to be around a dog, rather, but you got her in front of our children. I am wounded because I thought that my child was going to be safe in this district.
Sorry about that.
I thought my child would be safe in this district. My child isn't safe. How am I supposed to let him go thinking he's safe? And what am I to do? I've gone time after time to meetings, and I am not resolved. I've had a meeting supposedly with Shirley Green that I told her I couldn't make the meeting until 10 o'clock. She schedules a meeting with this teacher at 8 o'clock. I can't put my children on the bus until 9. So it's like as though the teacher is racist. Some of the people in administration are racist, because you bent over backward to handle this teacher's business and make her comfortable, but you did nothing for my child. You did nothing for my family. You didn't even give us she didn't even get a chance to even apologize to me for touching my son. No police were called, no CPS were called on her. Is there a policy in place where Adam Herbansky has got everybody scared that teachers aren't? Oh, we can do whatever we want to our children, to these children. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Wow.
Next speaker on the agenda is Koyo Schroeder. I mispronounced your name, I'm sure. I apologize for that.
Good evening. My name is Koji Schroeder, and I'm a retired Rochester City School teacher. I'm here to talk about a particular problem for SLIFE students with limited uninterrupted education. Thank you. Before I start complaining, I want to thank you for allowing me to speak to you and two other departments, one, the placement department and the transportation, for being always gracious and welcoming to the population with whom I work. Now, problem. In the years since I have left my beloved district, there have been so many good and bad things happening in our district. One of the most disheartening issues that is placing the lives of some of our young refugees in peril is the absence of an appropriate program for them. Those who come to our school district with slight or no prior literacy are facing a rough landing. Many years ago, when the district started to receive many SLIFE refugees from Southeast Asia and East Africa, you're all too young to remember that, but I do. We had a program called COPES. The acronym stood for Cultural Orientation Program for Educational Survival. I was the teacher who worked in that program. The idea was to prepare our life population for work through intensive literacy and vocational-related programs. You all may view my hollering as extravagantly unreasonable. I have tried desperately to ask for our power holders to pay attention to the needs of our life population. All I can note, however, is seeing those students moving on toward the edge of the cliff. My interest in the education of our young students has never faltered. And now, as I see how the needs of our Slav refugees are ignored, my emotions are rightfully composed in the key of rage. The district tone of indifference towards the needs of our life displays contempt for everything that defines caring and understanding. It defines inequality, educational malfeasance, and plain indifference to what ought to matter. If I sound desperate and angry, it's because I am, and you all also ought to be, if you were to honestly look at what is going on. I'm hoping you can all muster enough courage to respond to the needs of those whose voices you are not hearing. There is virtue in caring. I know we all are battling against a host of problems in our city, but we must never forget to stand up against injustice and difference. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Schroeder. Cornelius Clay. Cornelius Clay. Okay. Loyalty Clay. I apologize again. No. Mr. Eagle, Howard Eagle.
Good evening to everyone.
Good evening.
I will be speaking for the members of the group tonight, and we would like the document given to the clerk read into the board minutes. We are here as local, state, federal citizens, taxpayers, participants, and co-leaders of the Rochester City School District. Racial Equity Advisory Leadership Team, properly known as the REAL Team. We want to remind the Rochester Board of Education that the night of January 24th, 2019, when the majority of the board voted to institutionalize REAL. In this process of speaking in favor of the resolution number 2018-19, 631, which established REAL as a permanent body in the Rochester City School District. Board's president, Mr. Van White, stated publicly, "I think the phrase continuity is an important one. Commissioner Davis is absolutely correct." Dr. Aquino wasn't the first to say it. I know I and others have said it before, and this board has responded to the sort of flip-flopping that we do when we get new superintendents. So this is an age-old problem which the board recognized when we transitioned from Dr. Bohan Vargas to Barbara Dean Williams. And we said to her in her interview, we want to stay the course on certain things. And this, by the way, was something that Dr. Aquino made reference to on page 7 of his report. He wrote, "Each superintendent brings a new vision and seeks to implement new programs, but when a superintendent exits, the vision and seeks to implement new programs, but when a superintendent exits, the system typically abandons initiatives just as they are beginning to take hold. All stakeholders express concern and that this uncertainty at the top creates a sense of complacency throughout the system. And I think it cannot be said enough to make sure that these is clearly here. We are not talking about Section 2260. We talk about the creation of special advisory committees. We're not talking about that. We're talking about continuity. We're talking about the need for the continuity and probably the most critical area, the most critical issue that confronts this nation. And if you don't know it, and you should, just look at the headlines when you get home. You're going to see this issue of race and racism. And if we do not begin to create some structural mechanism by which this school district deals with it and have that structural mechanism in place consistently, our children are going to inherit our very bad legacy of racism in the United States of America.
Mr. Tanksley, you need to sum it up, please.
I'm going to take the rest of the minutes from our team.
That is not how it works,
Well,
Mr. Tanksley.
I want to read the rest of
Tanksley,
this.
Mr.
White's
Tanksley,
profound
Mr.
quote
Tanksley, if you would like
above
someone else to
points
continue to
critically
read, who's on the list.
Important fact that
Mr. Tanksley, you know the rules as I described them to you.
institutional racism
I'm going to
are
ask
part
you
of
to
the
sum it up.
parcel of the white supremacist-based society.
Mr. Tanksley, what's going to happen is you're going to continue to speak and you're going to cut off other people's right to speak because we're going to go into executive session.
Of each and every
It's the last
majority
warning, Mr.
institution
Tanksley. Sum it up.
within the society.
Can I get a
Racism
motion
is
to go into
embedded
executive session?
in the
Then
foundation,
moved
very
by Commissioner
political
LeBron and seconded by Commissioner
policies,
Elliott. All those in
procedures,
favor
rules,
say aye.
regulation,
Aye.
and the laws that establish the institutions have guided and governed them historically and continue to do so today. It can be credibly argued that other than the possibility, exception of family education represents the most effective institution within the society relative to potentially reinforcing and helping
Just so that
and
it's
maintain
clear,
racism.
we're going into executive session to
This is
discuss, to
especially
receive counsel,
and
advice from our legal counsel,
particularly,
and
but
to discuss
certainly
the
not
disposition of a
exclusively
particular
true
employee.
regarding
Thank you, sir. Go ahead.
Eurocentric curricular, especially funding mechanism and power dynamics relative to racial